World War I, also known as the Great War, was a war that saw many technological innovations. The technological innovations during World War I had a major impact on the war. Weapons that were introduced were machine guns, tanks, submarines, flamethrowers, shrapnel, chemical weapons, zeppelins, airplanes, and barbed wire. Technological innovations had a catastrophic effect on warfare and brought it into a modern age. The main factor that many historians consider as the event that started World War I was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife were touring Sarajevo when a member of the Young Bosnian movement threw a bomb at their car. The bomb did not do any damage to Ferdinand and his wife, but it did injure an army officer and a few bystanders. Later in the day, Ferdinand's car took a wrong turn near where Gavrilo Princip, a young Serbian nationalist, was standing. Seizing this opportunity, Princip fired at the car and killed Franz Ferdinand and his wife. When news spread about the assassination, Austria-Hungary became very angered and decided that they needed to take action. On July 23rd, the Austro-Hungarian ambassador gave an ultimatum to Serbia. The ultimatum was the Serbian government must take steps to wipe out terrorist organizations within its borders, suppress anti-Austrian propaganda, and accept an independent investigation by the Austro-Hungarian government into Franz Ferdinand's assassination or face military action. Serbia did not like the ultimatum they were offered, and they appealed to Russia for help. The Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II, began mobilizing his army because he believed that Germany was going to launch a preventive war in the Balkans. On July 28th, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia on August 1st due to the news they heard of Russia's general mobilization. The German army then attacked Russia's ally, France, through Belgium, violating Belgium's neutrality and bringing the United Kingdom into the war. Over the next 4 years, World War I grew to involve the United Kingdom, Japan, the Middle East, and the United States. The war would lead to the death of 20 million soldiers and 21 million more injured. In 1914, when war broke out in Europe, the United States wanted to remain neutral. This was hard for the United States and Britain as they were close trading partners during the war. While Americans were exporting and importing goods, with Britain, their ships were damaged by German mines. In February of 1915, Germany announced unrestricted warfare against all ships, neutral or otherwise, that entered the war zone around Britain. A month later, the United States found out that a German cruiser sunk the William P. Frye, a private American vessel. Woodrow Wilson was extremely angered by this. In order to fix what had happened, Germany apologized and said it was a mistake. On May 7th, a British-owned ship known as the Lusitania was traveling just off the coast of Ireland when it was torpedoed without warning. 1,198 passengers were killed, of which there were 128 Americans. The United States was very upset by this, but Germany promised to make sure passengers were safe before sinking unarmed vessels. Germany did not keep this promise. In November, Germany sunk an Italian ship and 272 people were killed. Of those killed were 27 Americans. These German attacks caused many Americans to become angered with Germany. In response to these hostile acts, America decided to take action. On February 22nd, Congress passed a $250 million arms appropriations bill intended to make the United States ready for war. Germany then sunk 4 more U.S. ships in late March. This was the final straw for the United States. On April 2nd, President Wilson went before Congress and asked for a declaration of war against Germany. His request was granted 4 days later. On June 26, American troops landed in Europe and began to train for combat. Throughout the war, America helped out their allies by providing them with the men and supplies needed in order to be successful. America's entrance into the war is considered a turning point, and it helped the Allies to victory. Tanks and armored cars played an important role in the war. Both sides, the Allies and the Central Powers, used trench warfare, and this meant that traditional vehicles could not be used efficiently. Tanks allowed troops to travel over trenches and barbed wire. One reporter from the Los Angeles Times wrote about the armored car and how effective it was. The reporter wrote, "The car carried light field guns and a quantity of ammunition. It could travel 25 miles an hour over rough and hilly country." Without tanks, the war most likely would have lasted longer. Tanks allowed for safe transport over the no man's land because troops didn't have to worry about being mowed down by machine guns and shrapnel. The use of trenches led to barbed wire being used. Barbed wire served as a barrier to keep soldiers out of trenches. World War I was the first war that machine guns were used in. Machine guns played an important role because they allowed men to fire more rounds than they could with a regular gun. Also, machine guns put an end to cavalry because men riding horses were easy targets for machine guns. Another deadly weapon that was used during the war is shrapnel. Shrapnel was put into artillery shells. When they would explode, the shrapnel would spray out and impale everything around it. The injuries during World War I that were due to the shrapnel were very severe. Shrapnel would cut up a man's body and cause severe deformities. Zeppelins played an important role in obtaining intelligence and causing major damage. A Washington Post reporter obtained a civilian's first-hand account of what the Zeppelins could do. Dr. Charles said, "I have just lived through the most tragic night war. For the first time in history, a great civilized community had been bombarded from the sky in the darkness of night." Zeppelins were also used in combat as a way for troops to obtain the positions of their enemy. In the Zeppelins, men could have a bird's eye view, which allowed them to clearly see the trenches that were occupied by their enemy. By knowing the positions of their enemy troops, we're able to know where and when to attack and what to expect. Chemical weapons and flamethrowers also played an important role in the war. During World War I, the two main chemical weapons that were used were chlorine gas and mustard gas. The Germans were the ones who introduced mustard gas into battle. Mustard gas was very deadly and it had many negative side effects. When a person comes in contact with mustard gas, it burns whatever flesh is exposed. In many cases, men's faces and bodies were burned. Mustard gas was delivered in battle in two different ways. One was in shell form and the other in gas form. In shell form, the mustard gas would be mixed in with other ingredients and then fired by artillery. In the gas form, the mustard gas would be freed from tanks, and then the wind would blow it into the enemy lines. A thing about mustard gas that made it so deadly was that if a man came in contact with it, there was no cure for him. Some other gases, like chlorine gas, that were used during the war had no color to them, which made it very scary for soldiers because they could not see what could possibly kill them. When a man would come in contact with chlorine gas, their lungs would fill with liquid and they would suffocate to death. Flamethrowers were also used a lot during World War I. The Germans were the first ones to introduce liquid fire and use it as a weapon. The goal of flamethrowers was to cause as much damage as possible. They were also supposed to clear defenders out of the way for the rest of the soldiers. Liquid gas helped to instill fear in many soldiers. In World War I, planes were used for the first time in battle. In previous wars, there has never been a battle in the air. Planes, just like Zeppelins, were used to help troops gain intelligence about their enemy, and they also dropped bombs. Submarines were also used in the war. During World War I, the Germans developed their own submarine called U-boats. The use of submarines led to the first time that unrestricted warfare took place. During World War I, technology evolved and became more advanced. Due to this change, warfare became more modern and more deadly. Technological innovations had a catastrophic effect on warfare and brought it into the modern age.